Excuse me. Hello, welcome. It's Friday night on the Instagram live feed for the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. My name is Matt Bailey, back again, your national ambassador, doing another live stream tonight. It's Friday night. I'm back home, which is great. I've been out on the road a bit, running around. I was in Melbourne last night, hosting for the Melbourne Cricket Club, I should say, at the MCG, which is fantastic. I'm back now in Sydney, which is great. I flew back in this morning, and it's just great to be able to do a traditional live stream again tonight. Hello to some of the usuals, some of the regulars, I should say. 45 Fins, Squizzer, back Jerry. Good to see you, Jack. Hillwood, Sam, hope you're all well. Cal, hope you're well. Look, a few things I want to go over tonight, but there's one topic in particular I want to touch on, but I'll come to that in a moment. But I want to talk about, I just mentioned, this private event we did last night was for the Melbourne Cricket Club. That's harder to say than I thought. Melbourne Cricket Club, which is fantastic. I learned some amazing things, actually, about the Melbourne Cricket Club whilst I was there, including how they've got 122,000 members or something. And that's not unusual for a city that has, whatever it is, 3.5-4 million people that live in Melbourne. And for them to be that many sport fanatics to be members of the club is not really that amazing. It is amazing, but at the same time, obviously, lots of international members, I'm guessing, and lots of members from around Australia. But what blows my mind is just how there's currently an 18-year wait list to join the club, to become a full member, I should say. So if your parents register you to become a member of the Melbourne Cricket Club in the day you're born, and that's all you need to have is a date of birth to begin, then you might make it to 18 years old before your membership starts. So those who are joining when they're sort of 20 or something and they've taken an interest in sport, then you might be 38, 40 years old before your entry is accessed, which is amazing. Gaucho. Hot dog extravaganza, right? Okay, yeah, that's Hot dog writes. This is exactly what happened with a friend of mine. Yeah, it's true. It's incredible. Like, if you think that you get into cricket maybe as a young chap, like maybe you're 12, 13, you like start discovering cricket, you might not be. You'll be 30 before you gain access, which is like, I think that's outstanding. I think that's quite something, isn't it? That's sort of like that's something you think about and go, wow, it's like. And I was remarking with a colleague earlier today about. What if that was like where the society might be like in 10 or 20 years? Of course, that's silly speculation, but it's sort of like, where it's sort of, I might end up being a wait list to access some casks. I mean, we already sometimes do ballot for some, limit one per member for others, etc. And that's understandable. But we've never obviously, membership's always open, which is fantastic, which means that everyone can access it. But it's always just been one of those things that I've thought about, like, oh, imagine that. It's like, it's not a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's just a thing, isn't it, really? It's kind of difficult to describe, I guess. SM Yan, Sally. SM Yan, I've got one for you, mate. As you may have seen from the story I posted about an hour ago. Thank you very much for that. I'm drinking a can of Pale Ale, Hopsters Brewing Co. Oh, you may notice I'm actually back on front camera tonight because literally 3 minutes ago I was like, the phone from my stand has completely run out of battery and I didn't get a chance to charge it the last few days. So there's no point in me trying to do that. I've got a couple of old iPhones that I sometimes use here, and one of them, the battery is really buggered, but the battery on my normal one is just dead flat at the moment. So Liam is here. That was rather robotic, but welcome. Calte says, you must have some stories from the past 2 days, 51-year-old whiskey and a short Melbourne trip. So that's what I was going to start with, actually. I'll start with a short Melbourne trip saying, sometimes I'm in Melbourne really just overnight. It's just a quick fly in, fly out for an event. Sometimes it's even fly in the morning, fly back at night, depending on the time of event and whatnot. I'll be back next weekend, the first weekend of November, for our Supernormal lunch in Melbourne, with Supernormal, which is going to be so much fun. So that's, I think it kicks off at 12:30. I think it's sold out. If it hasn't, it's very close to. And I'll talk about that 51-year-old whiskey because that's actually the subject of tonight's discussion, is old whiskey. So let me talk about that whiskey, that 51-year-old whiskey the other night. Okay. It was held at Duke of Clarence. I was invited to go just as a guest from the ballot that Craigellachie held for those who are you entered a chance to taste this whiskey. The Craigellachie were doing similar to what we did with the Gathering Ardbeg. No bottles of that 51-year-old were sold, and no bottles of our Society Ardbeg were sold recently. It was just for tastings at events for members. Ours is a bit sort of looser, as in like, for members and events around the country, everyone gets a chance to taste it. What we're doing, however, with what Craigellachie did with the 51-year-old was they opened a bunch of bottles around the world and shared them with those who entered a ballot for a chance to taste it. I think it's a marvelous idea because, let's be honest, a 51-year-old single cask, single malt whiskey these days, whether it has a society badge on it, whether it has a Craigellachie badge on it, whatever it is, a lot of them these days are being bought by collectors and squirreled away into collections never to be enjoyed. And I think that's kind of a little bit sad in some ways. You see these sort of bottles come up at auction and stuff. It's like, how many hands has that bottle passed through? It's like it's been around the world probably, that bottle, just in shipping alone. Before, and then someone else will flip it, and then it'll get moved somewhere else, and someone else will make their $6 on selling it, whatever. Then a trip to West Discount this weekend. Melbourne will be going off. Derby Days on the 2nd. Oh man, yeah. It's going to be mental, isn't it? Yeah. So the true spirit of that's a good point. Yeah, that's the true spirit of whiskey, Liam. It's sort of that whole sort of approach of like actually opening it and sharing it around with people, and I think that's a really lovely way of doing it. Because let's be honest, so the 23-year-old could get Craigellachie is $750 or thereabouts, which is quite a lot of money. Let's be honest, it's a lot of money to spend on a bottle of whiskey. So $750 for the Craigellachie 23. I think the 31 is like $2,000 or something, $2,500 or something. I can't remember. It doesn't matter. So therefore, a 40-year-old, let alone a 51-year-old whiskey from them, would probably fetch, if they wanted to sell it, close to, safely these days, $40,000 to $50,000 a bottle. If you think the Balvenie 50 is about $45,000, then a Craigellachie 51 that positions itself as a premium single malt and a very old-fashioned way of making whiskey would certainly be probably $50,000, $55,000 even. And it would be purchased, people would buy it. Maybe not so many buyers in Australia for a whiskey that price. Our market isn't as mature as other markets when it comes to super premium whiskies. But there would certainly be some buyers. I reckon there'd be a couple of people in Australia who would buy it. And there'd be another, by the way, the total yield of that bottling was 51 bottles worldwide. They kept 9 in archive at the distillery, and the rest were all poured out at events. They gave one to Dave Broom, I think, which is worthy because he wrote all about it, and he's a part of that fabric of that whole sort of like of it all with them. So exactly, it's for drinking, not flipping or sitting in a cupboard forever. Robert says entirely correct. So I want to talk about that aspect of the whiskey community just for a moment, but also I'll talk about the Craigellachie 51 as my own personal tasting note of it as well, if you're interested to hear it, of course. So we tasted the 13, the 17, the 23, and then the 51. The 51 was presented in a different room with a whole lot of ceremony and circumstance, which was lovely. And Bacardi had to host an event. They certainly they flew Georgie Bell out, the global brand ambassador for Craigellachie, for the Bacardi folio of brands. Georgie got her feet wet in the whiskey industry with the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. So she was actually our first SMWS ambassador, global ambassador in a way. I might be getting that exact title wrong, but she was an ambassador for the Scotch Malt Whisky Society from working behind the bar at the Vaults. So it's really awesome to see like people around the trade who got their start in the society, especially at a time when the society was quite nascent. It was quite a different club back then in many ways. It was quite a bit smaller. It was really sort of a UK-based club with some small international branches, and now it's much more of a sort of an international club, which is fantastic. But she got a great start through the society, obviously. Then she moved to Diageo, and now she's with Bacardi, who own Craigellachie. I should provide some more context there. So that's and that's really cool. It was great to meet her. Great to see her again. I've met her a few times. We don't know each other very well, but I mean, we do have a laugh sometimes about some of the history of the society and some of the things that were different in her time versus now, etc. Just as a side note, Liam, you said that not to expect much from that Hopsters brewery. I beg to differ. That's a really full-bodied, lovely ale real bits of passion fruit, and the citrus note is there, and it's the kind of can that I'd be happy drinking one. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just like it's so full. It's such a rich whiskey rich beer. Gah! It's such a rich beer that it's like, one beer is like, I'm done. But that's a good thing. It's a very it's like you don't need a second can of it. I'd get through a 6-pack in a week kind of thing of that one. It's lovely. Thank you thank you very much again for that as a gift. So yeah, I just want to where was I? So the Craigellachie 51. We bottle some Craigellachie's at the Society. In fact, here's a little leak for you if you're watching tonight. There is a Craigellachie in Christmas outturn. 15th of November is the release of that outturn. You're going to start to see sneak peeks and previews on our Facebook page and group, and on Twitter and Instagram in the next few weeks, which is great. And on our website, of course, on some content on our website, some things to read, some things to discover in there, which is fantastic. So, with that said, back to the Craigellachie. The code for us is 44. They don't have a code, obviously. It's just, they just call it Craigellachie. We call it 44. It's the two things about Craigellachie I find that are present in almost all their spirit is it's quite a heavy spirit. It's a bit of sulfur contact, a bit of sort of spirit sulfur, I should say. So quite a heavy sort of heavy spirit, and I mean that in a complimentary way. It's like the opposite of Glenlivet, as an example. So Glenlivet's quite floral, pear drops, citrus kind of notes in Glenlivet. Whereas in this one, there's much more sort of, heavy sort of like heavy metals, charriness, sort of a bit of train track. I love that kind of smell in a whiskey. That almost diesel fume, as I've spoken about before. I keep mentioning diesel fume. There's no diesel fume in Craigellachie, but it's sort of bordering on that. But one note that is present in most Craigellachie releases, even our single casks, is pineapple. And they almost get a sort of a very sort of like, and I don't mean sort of like, I almost mean like pineapple preserve. It's quite a sort of a rich, charry pineapple, like almost like barbecued pineapple pieces. And that's like a way to, like a lightly barbecued pineapple piece or something on a burger or something like that would be, it's sort of like more sort of Craigellachie style rather than light sort of fresh pineapple juice or something. We'll grab some of these comments. AD talking very briefly on what he picked up and what did you pick up on the nose and palate and the overall experience. Oh yeah, so that's what I'm sort of talking about. Geez, when was the last 44 though? SMN. Well, it was probably, Liam, the last 44 was probably not that long ago. I mean, I'd say early this year, that's a little while ago, it was 9 or 10 months ago. So we had one in the January or February outturn, I believe. It's like a 44.93 or something, and now we're up to 44.99 for this outturn, I think, or .100 or something. I'll have to check. Jason, and by the way, I'll give you a preview of what that. And I'll talk about that 44 another time. Anyway, LPG, good oily mouthfeel, indeed. So let's talk about that 51-year-old. When whiskey gets old, it doesn't get better. Now I want to pick my words carefully here. It doesn't get better. It just gets older. And the reason that one of the many reasons why old whiskey can be quite expensive, and especially more and more, is for two reasons. One, primarily scarcity. This is 51 bottles in the world of that 51-year-old. It's a single cask, and it was bottled at 40.6%, so it's quite low proof. And the other reason is you've got to understand how few casks go that distance. As in, like, let's say you maturing a whiskey at a distillery and it's sitting at 20 years old in the cask. It's like, and you nose it and you're like, they're tasting it from the cask. They go to tasting panel in the UK or whatever it is, and they say, that whiskey at 20 years old is ready to be bottled. Like, they'd say that at 21 or 22 years old, it might be over-oaked. It's like overcooked. Oh, we left it too long. That's a shame. How do you get a whiskey to last 51 years? It's a bit of magic, I'll be honest. It's sort of a bit sort of like, it lasts a certain distance, and there's so few casks that have that sort of, I'll say almost inactivity to last that distance. And for a distillery to have the patience to make sure that it doesn't fall below 40%, it doesn't leak all the way out, the angel share doesn't claim the whole cask, there's so many factors there that they have to take into account, and to even get 51 bottles. So, I don't know my maths, but 51 times 700 mils, that's not many litres left in that cask. I should know this better, shouldn't I? I was gonna say 25 liters, but that's not correct because it's not 500 ml bottles; they're 700 ml. In fact, I think they're 750 ml. Anyway, but what my point is, was it over oaked? Is a good question. It wasn't over oaked. No, it wasn't. It was, however, 99.99% on the nose. When you get something like an old cognac or like a really old cognac or an old whiskey, it's less and less about the palate and less and less about the finish, even in many cases, and so much more about the nose. This whiskey was a nosing whiskey. It was one that you could sit on for, it was the kind of whiskey you could nose for 2 to 3 hours. And then when you taste it, it's lovely. It meets expectation of the nose in many ways. The finish is a bit short. The palate was actually quite thin, quite sort of like tired on the palate a bit. Not surprising for its age. I thought it was a lovely whiskey, but I really thought it was one of those whiskeys where everything was about the nose on that whiskey. And there's so much lovely old complexity of oak and spirit, and you could actually still nose a bit of spirits. It wasn't like, just last night I tasted a 40-year-old whiskey, which you couldn't have told me it didn't matter what distillery it was. It had lost all spirit character. It was well and truly over the hill. And that was nice. It was nice, but it was like, it didn't really have what I could have been drinking anything really. But at 51 years, this was similar category, but it still had a bit of spirit character, which was lovely. Just in the background there, just a wisp in the background. And it did almost have its own sense of old bottle effect. It sort of had that sort of, but is that old bottle effect, sort of like, almost like that dry camphor and old mahogany, Chesterfields, dusty bookshelves, that kind of stuff in the note, which was lovely. I'm going to grab some of these questions whilst I'm talking about this. Hair flick 0. Yeah, you know what? It's sitting nicely tonight. I don't need to hair flick right now. Good oily mouthfeel indeed. What happened to the barrel? It would have. Look, I don't know, Gaucho. I don't know what happened to that barrel. I mean, I'm guessing it's probably retired. It was already a refill. Why did they put 9 into the archives? Most distilleries. Why did they put 9 into the archives? Most distilleries put 1 to 5 max, and they decided to go so high. Yeah, that's a good question, Cal. I think it's because they know that not many casks go that distance, and they want to have an ample reserve sitting at the distillery for experiences in the future. That gives them sort of almost 20 years of usage out of that bottle in many ways, because they could whip one out every 2 years or something for a special occasion or something. Or they might do a distillery vertical one day at the distillery for select guests or something, where they'll have a 55-year-old whiskey one day maybe or something. They can pull that out as well. So yeah, that's their choice. I've got no idea. Yes, sorry, Obi Drinks. They talked about that on the night. So they talked about how it was taken out of barrel in 2014. So it was sitting in glass for about 4 years. It was bottled in late 18, early 19, and they've sort of been putting the PR and the tour around it together in the meantime. They sometimes do that. Obviously, it was like 51. I think the reason for them putting it into glass was because of that sort of one trick that they do at Craigellachie. Like they like the 13-year-old whiskey instead of a 12. A 17 instead of a 16, a 31 instead of a 30 kind of thing, and so this one's sort of a 51 rather than 50, and also it was sitting at 40.6%. I think if they left it much longer, there's the fear of it dropping below 40, and then they're really stuffed. Team refill, oof. Yeah, 9 bottles for each of the 4 places around the world. Yeah, exactly. There you go. You're better at remembering those numbers than I am. They'll make as much out of those 9 bottles in the next 20 years as they would have by selling them. Yeah, that's true. They really will. They'll make so much. They'll make really the amount of promo and effort around putting those 9 bottles around the world for the next 20 years will be well worth the effort of them not selling them, if that makes sense. Because they'll sell a lot more 13-year-old and out of it is, of course, that's part of the plan. I'm guessing. It's not guessing. It is. And that's not. I'm not saying that in a negative way at all. Obviously, it's for them to. It's an absolute brand promotion tool for them having a whiskey of that age and sharing it around with everyone. It's nothing more than that, really. They're not selling them, so they don't care about having 9 bottles held back. Yeah. So they're not selling them anyway. There's no money value in them anyway, so they're just pouring them out otherwise. And giving them all this priceless brand awareness. Yeah, exactly. It is priceless brand awareness, and to have that kind of that kind of strength to be able to do that, and to be able to have that sort of budget to say, well, we're going to just share them all around for the the next couple of years, or at least a bit this year, and then maybe later, of course. The packaging was very pretty, of course. Yeah, it's a lovely bottle. Craigellachie always do those really sort of old school sort of, it's an old school looking bottle, and I like that. I like that in a whiskey. I like modern bottles as well, like New World sort of styles and things like that. But I'm going to pour my first whiskey because I'm talking so much, and I'm going to do a bit of sort of A/B here of a young whiskey and an old whiskey. So I'm talking about old whiskey, so I'm going to have just a wee dram of each and just a small taste of each. A little bit too much in that one, that's okay. I'm sure I'll get through it. And then an old whiskey. Ooh, much more delicate. Corks even get delicate after a long bit of age. Now I'm being a bit disingenuous because this second whiskey is not really old in age. It's just an old bottling. You can probably tell from the paper label. This was featured recently at the Archieros pop-up bar. 93.15 is the code on that. So a 1991 distillate from Distillery 93 in Campbelltown. One of our directors at the time used to write the names on the bottles for himself, and this is one of his old bottles. So any guesses to what it is pretty out the window at this point. You recognise that ribbon? Yes. This was the ribbon indicated it was a member-only pour at the Archieros pop-up bar. So it was just members only are the only ones allowed to access that on the bar, which was just one of the ways that we sort of added a little bit of exclusivity to the whole experience. Of course, it wasn't a members-only bar. It was anyone could have joined. And there were lots of other people that came down, which is fantastic. So again, thank you for that. Top 5 ever. Wow. That is a big call, Liam. That is a big call, but I appreciate that. Now, the one I'm starting with, on my left, is called the Deserted Forest. Now, this is the membership offer bottle that went out with the Archieros release. It's in the young and sprightly category. It's a 10-year-old. I'm sorry it's back to front. Like I said, my other phone died for those who missed the beginning of this stream. So I'm back to front camera just for tonight. I should have it rectified by tomorrow. Oh, this is like an aperitif, this one. By the way, it's 61.9%. So I've tasted it neat before. I'm going to add just a little drop of water to this. Just to really open that up. This was I presented this whiskey last night at the MCC gig. It was actually the favourite of the night. I pulled out a 20-year-old Glenlossie. I pulled out a brand new Kalila. Things like that, which are like, oh, it's great. But this was the hit. Pardon me. It's like aperitif. It is. It's like this is the kind of whiskey that you'd want to pour before dinner. This is a before dinner dram. I've already had dinner, but it could be a before dinner dram. Wow. Distillery 72, I won't say it's underrated because it's a bit of a sort of cult status distillery these days. Their spirit quality is remarkable. It's what some would call in the industry a dressing malt. The kind of whiskey that is used in blends to dress the blend, to create that extra dimension on top. And understandably so, because this is definitely the kind of whiskey that where it's that lovely, rich, oily sweetness to it. And again, as I've said before, and I'll say it again, our young and sprightlies and codes like 72s are huge outturn sleepers. People look at them and go, that's not a big code or a big age statement, or I don't like young and sprightly. Does that mean it's new makey? No. This is balance. This is 10-year-old sweet and oily balance. It's like a chocolate forest gâteau. It's like a sort of a forest cake in a glass. Unbelievable. Let's top 5 ever. Huge call on that Scotia. So if I, Gen Pop, went to that distillery and asked to try, would they pour and share or pay a shell price the experience, or would you have to be a well-known person of the whiskey pop? General population, sorry, yes. I thought that was like a generation I didn't know about yet, that you're in Cal, sort of like we've had Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, and what are we up to now? Gen Pop. Now, I've just shown my age now, haven't I? No. I think you'd be able to pour you a dram of it if you went to the distillery, if you went to Craigellachie. I'm sure if you if you just, if you showed that you were interested, and that you weren't just sort of like, how do you drink whiskey, kind of like, a tour bus punter or something. It was like, I don't know, whatever policy they have, they might have it there for for certain like premium tours or something. A lot of distilleries in Scotland do sort of like a general tour, which might be sort of £15 or £20 or something to go on. Then some distilleries do like a premium tour. So instead of being sort of a 20-minute sort of walk around, it's sort of like a 2.5-hour experience. And they can be quite costly. Some of them, I know one distillery is like, they charge like £180 for that now. But at the end of it, after a more extensive tour of the grounds and of the barrels and everything like that, it's kind of like at the end, you go to like a private tasting room and you taste sort of some of their more premium range. And I think maybe Craigellachie could do that. I don't know their visitor centre well enough, sorry. Dram and Draw, good to see you, mate. Good to see you. It's a big call, but damn, great, delicious whiskey. Yeah, no, true. Was there a new Kalila distillery coming out time for Christmas? Do you mean Kalila as in like 53 there, Cal? If so, then yes. If you mean a new distillery code, not for Christmas, but there is a revival of some old codes, which is exciting. We just wondered, have you got any whiskey aroma nosing kits recommended? Yeah, I covered that a little while back there, Louis Slew. Just the whiskey nosing kit from Whiskey Academy. They're really good. They're really good. Kids these days, calm down, Dr. Akers. It's okay. Yes, I know that now. I'm sorry. Jen Pop. Sorry, I was a bit confused. If you pronounce their name right, you get a dram. Diana Patrice, thanks for joining. So Deserted Forest is sort of the name of the game on this one. Opens up just nicely with a drop of water. Seriously nice. It's oily and it's lovely. It's almost like, there's one tasting on here, caramel sauce and pine cones. Lovely. The 53 SR 7 sneak peek. Yeah, so there is a 53 coming. When I say 53 coming, there's lots of 53s. We've had so many recently, and they're all just so consistently good. That we've had, the .290, the .275, .285, .293. There's been so many good 53s lately. So I guarantee you there's at least 2 or 3 different 53s on the website right now. I don't want to guarantee it, but there'll be at least 1 or 2. And they're just so good. They're such good drinkers. Monarch Perth, you're using your other account, Diana. Okay, awesome. Good to see you, Monarch Perth. I was wondering, new person. Here we go. That was an easy drinker. Very easy. I'm going to take my time with this one a bit more, because this is a true piece of liquid history here. Liam, I think I might have to agree with you. Oh, the nose on that. 53 question mark. Well, the 53s are almost always peated, either lightly peated or peated. We've had a couple of heavily peated 53s as well. Being a peated whiskey distiller, predominantly peated spirit run out of Islay. The actual code, I can't remember off the top of my head. We had 53.300 Unbridled Joy in September. That was a lovely cask. Hugely underrated whiskey, that one. And also in outturn, from September, and I'm dialing back a bit here, but that 11248, the Piece of Paradise, lovely stuff. But I obsess over Loch Lomond, so it's okay. They're my sort of, Loch Lomond's my distillery of 2019 almost. They're one of the most fascinatingly diverse and distilleries on earth. I'll dedicate a whole live stream to Loch Lomond soon, don't worry. So that was my comments on old whiskey. Let me just sort of recap a bit here. Old whiskey is not better, it's just older. It has a different profile. It often picks up much more complexities of the oak. And very few casks go the distance, and the scarcity of whiskey that age is remarkably high. It's highly scarce, is what I'm trying to say. Islay gang, yeah. So it's old whiskey. Most of it doesn't go the distance, and so getting a whiskey that can go that distance and is still actually nice to nose and drink, is lovely. Like I said, that Craigellachie 51 was a lovely whiskey. For those who saw that I attended, it was definitely the kind of whiskey where it was all nose, and the palate was just somewhat thin, and I prefer a bit more of an oilier, richer mouthfeel for most of my whiskies. But I very much appreciate being able to taste that, and I think that's the kind of whiskey that it's definitely sort of a contemplative it's a piece of history, liquid history. It's no different from going to an art gallery. And for me, I love modern art. I love a lot of modern art. And when I say modern art, I mean a lot of 20th century art, I should say. A lot of like early and mid 20th century art I love, for instance. But you go to an art gallery, I look at modern art, I go, that's fantastic, I love it. Whereas, and I see some of the sort of like 16th, 17th century art, and I go, I like it. It's ridiculously detailed and it's fantastic, and obviously holds a place in the art world of extreme esteem. But I just don't. It's for me. It comes down to personal preference. It's subjectivity at its finest, which is what it's all about. What's the math on Angel Share? What's the theoretical oldest whiskey? Maybe one for Robert Eggers. Here you go. Okay, here you go. What's the math on Angel Share? In Scotland, it's generally regarded to be between 1 to 4% Angel Share per annum, and that's across most distilleries. There are some distilleries like Bruichladdich, like Glengoyne, and a few others that have ridiculously low Angel Shares. I'm talking like sort of 0.6%, rather than not even close, not even 1%, like 0.6, 0.5 to 0.6. Some that are a bit higher in Angel Share. There's some of the Highland distilleries where the Angel Share is actually a little bit higher, like 2.2, 2.4%, somewhere around there. But there are lots of variables, of course. The Angel Share is also depending on the leakiness of the cask, the structural integrity of the cask, where the cask sits in the rack. Is it sitting down low, sitting up high? Up high, it's going to get a bit warmer. So even by 0.1 of a degree, it might be warmer there than it is on the ground floor. Sometimes more than 0.1. Where that warehouse sits, all those. There's so many variables. So that changes so many things as well, of course. But in general, like Angel Share is quite low, but also how strong the spirit was when it was filled into the cask. Was it filled at 70%? Was it filled at 63.4? Was it filled at lower than 63? I mean, there's so many variables. I mean, than on the Angel Share side of things. It's in the honey spot temperature. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the honey spot temperature is a good one. The number of variables are so wide, as so many as well as to what the Angel Share ends up being. So it's really it's quite a tricky one to actually give you an exact number on that. But I hope that helps. Actually, you should assign homework, Liam. Dr. Akers, you should do that as well. There you go. That's the Judge Bailey presiding has said that. Maybe a graph coming. Malia Barry, good to see you, Barry. Hope you're well. It's certainly warming up in Sydney. It was like 34 degrees today in late October, which is not that unusual, but it's it's sort of like it was a warm day, and that normally requires for me a lighter or sweeter whiskey. So this Glen Scotia is definitely on the is definitely not light, and it is not too sweet, but I'm enjoying it an awful lot tonight. Oh, I'll show that label one more time, and maybe I'll bring a little bit of this with me to Supernormal next week, just to share around. There's not really much left in the bottle. There's only really sort of an inch of whiskey at the bottom, but it's really just a few people to be able to taste. It would be really nice in Melbourne as well, or anywhere else in Australia where I'm travelling. I'll see what I can work out there. I've talked a bit about old whiskey tonight. Old whiskey that's spent a long time in a cask, and the challenges that distilleries face with these kind of things, and how most of them end up in ornate crystal decanters in leather coffin boxes with satin lining, and even sometimes lights and sound effects that I think is extremely gaudy and even to the point of being tacky. So however you enjoy your whiskey, it's all about the spirit inside the bottle and all about opening them up and sharing them around with people. And I'll definitely tip my hat to Bacardi for doing that with this current activation. And I'll definitely say that that's what we did with our Gathering Ardbeg. I think we both did it at the same time. I don't think there's anyone copying anyone else, which is unusual. And then, and for us, it's all about sharing whiskey with good friends, which is what our Christmas parties are about. One last little plug tonight. My only plug tonight. Come to the Christmas parties. I hope to see you all there. I think they'll be up on the website as early as, what day is it today? Friday. I think they'll be up on Monday. I probably said that last week, didn't I? Anyway, they definitely need to be up by Monday because we're going to run out of time. And we want to invite as many people as possible. Starwood for Melbourne, RAC for Sydney, Brisbane, TBC, and that's not the name of a venue. That's to be confirmed. And then Perth, Jason's got a venue worked out, and Adelaide, Jenny's got a venue worked out. Canberra as well is happening. Andrew's hosting something in Canberra. It's our Cellar Master in Canberra. That's up on the website already, I think. And more to come, of course, as well. Let's have a look. Or WNA next weekend. Well, Robert, you're welcome to join in the live stream and explain some of this work to us, of course. All you have to do is click the thing when you join. It says request to be in the stream. You know how it works. Herbal cigar to Supernova. I'll take herbal cigar, mate. Top 5, man. That was unforgettable. Oh, mate. Some excellent mid-20s bottlings this year from SNWS, mate. There really has been some excellent sort of mid-20s. In fact, whilst it's sitting on my desk, not from this year, but that honey and spice poached pear, a 24-year-old from Distillery 9. That was a banger. That was a lovely whiskey, that one. I'm keen back. Chat. Haven't been to a uni lecture, and I would be a good journey in graphs and whiskey. That's one of the themes I think coming up. Robert, I need you in this live stream. You know how to join. Come on. Otherwise, I think I have to invite you to join, and I think it just gets messy. What's the date for Melbourne? May fly down. SM Yan. Oh, mate. Are you ready? The date for the Melbourne Christmas party is the afternoon after the Sydney one. I think I already told you that. 6th of December for Sydney, 7th of December for Melbourne. You can come watch me be a hot mess at the Melbourne one because, not a hot mess, I'll be professional, don't worry, but I'm coming in straight from the party the night before. And that's going to be a big day in Melbourne, of course, as well. How much for Christmas party at Starwood, mate? It's going to be $49. Yes, you get the whiskey bars, all catering, our own private space at Starwood for $49. The idea behind the Christmas parties is it's us sort of rewarding members for being members. It's us saying, hey guys, it's not a $69, $79, $99, $129 tasting. It's a $49. It's a total loss leader for us. Of course, we're opening so much whiskey, but the idea is that we share it around with everyone who gets to enjoy it and has been a part of the society this year so far. So I really hope you can be there. Still boned. Come on, man. I might still do the double. Waiting to see what my Sydney travel looks like. Rob, do both, mate. There'll be. Come on, do both. You're a damn trooper, I tell you what. And then kick on to WA free of charge on the 6th. On the 7th at Whiskey and Almond, there'll be kick-ons, definitely. Like on that day after the Christmas party. We did it last year. It was a huge night. It was fantastic. So the 6th, the Friday night, the 6th of December is Sydney. The 7th of December, Saturday afternoon at Starwood. It's an afternoon gig. It kicks on at 4 o'clock, I think. I'm at Orange Ryan Festival in a local whiskey bar, Washington Co. Scott Mileto and Sloan Harmon Wolf. Bar Wollongong. I'm looking forward to Christmas party. I'll be there. Oh, good to see you. Barry Marley, I'll see you at the Christmas party. Good to hear, mate. Where's Bailey? Mate, that's going to be that will trend again this year. The Rain Farmer joined. Rain Farmer, we're just wrapping up, but you can catch this on the stream. You can hit the story icon on our Instagram and watch this later, of course. Or you can watch it on YouTube in about an hour. That's all from me tonight. Thank you, everyone. Double kick-ons, mate. I've only got one liver. I'll see you all maybe tomorrow night. Otherwise, if it's not me, it'll be someone else, of course. But we're trying to do a live stream every single night, which is what my ambition is for this. Slanjavar, have a great night and have a great weekend. It's have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you. I almost hit end before I said that. Have a great weekend, everyone. Okay, cheers.